I'm Richard Haans. I'm an associate professor at the Department of Strategic Management and Entrepreneurship at the Rotterdam School of Management. I'm also the Director of Full-Time Education for the Graduate School of RSM and the School of Economics, ERIM. And I've been at RSM since 2017. One thing I like about the topic is that it's kind of at the intersection of strategic management on the one hand and also organization theory on the other. So it's quite a fundamental question for organizations, right? How different do you need to be? How different should you be from your competitors, from your peers to perform the best as you can? So I quite like that about the question as well. At the same time, I think it's a multifaceted question, because distinctiveness is always relative to others, and there's many elements to that I think you can unpack to make cool theoretical contributions, and also study many different kinds of organizations, which I think is really nice that you're not stuck to a single setting, a single phenomena. I think so, because it's such a fundamental question, it seems quite like a simple question, right? How different should you be from competitors? And it almost seems like there would be like a single answer to it. But both in terms of what people have found, it's really mixed. So people have found, inverted U-shapes, so you should be moderately different. U-shapes, which means you should not be moderately different. Positive, negative. So I think there's quite a lot to grapple with on that front. And then recent work has really started to just tease out all the little pieces of that question of being different. So there's recent work thinking about, okay, what's the reference point that makes the most sense to look at? So old work is mostly look at prototype, which is like the average position in the market. More recent work is also looking at really specific organizations, which they call exemplars. So I think that's a nice kind of angle to take, which makes it much more concrete, because that's an actual organization in the market. Work is also increasingly acknowledging it's really a multidimensional concept. So it's not like a spectrum, you're distinctive or you're not distinctive, but you can be distinctive in so many different ways. So just pulling that apart, are you conforming in one dimension and then being different in another? All these kinds of parts of the puzzle, I think, are now being answered. I think also with just the advent of textual data, people are studying not just the classic, big publicly traded firm, but also other kinds of organizing, other kinds of organizations, which I quite like myself. So I think there's many parts around this kind of simple question that are still very much open to future work. Yeah, I think one challenge in this kind of space is it's just moving so fast. Because for me, I was doing a PhD 2017 or so. Topic modeling was just the newer thing, and now it's already outdated, pretty much, right? And then now word embeddings are kind of emerging in this field, or document embeddings. But then already you have GPTs, you have the large language models. So I think that's really moving very fast. I think these different technologies all have their purpose. So I think topic modeling is still useful in like this space of work. For example, if you want to really understand why firms are different, like along which topics they are different, where the document embeddings are richer in terms of how they model like the relational aspects, but you can't say when a firm is very different, really, like why is it different? You just know it is different. And then the GPTs and the likes, I think they also are, worthwhile. I find it a little bit less comfortable in the sense that, the replicability is often more challenging. So even with the same model, it's difficult, to say the least, to replicate even your own work, let alone others. And then that's just really developing constantly. So the new models are coming out so rapidly that I find it very difficult, more difficult to really, feel confident in what you find with those kinds of models. I think it's also outsourcing a little bit some of the heavy lifting that I think the researchers should still be doing on the analysis part, where, if I run the embeddings or I run the topic models, I really need to know all the intricacies of it. For GPTs, I think they're almost sometimes a little bit too easy to use for some purposes. So I think that's a bit of a challenge, that you kind of potentially lose some of the grip on the research that with other methods you don't lose as much, I would say. Yeah, so I've been working with website data for quite some years now. So when I was doing my PhD, it was really scraping literally on the spot, pretty much, right? So you visit a website with a scraper or manually for that matter. You collect whatever is on there. At that point in time, if you want to have data over time, you wait a year, right? And then you collect it again. Um, and then the work kind of talking about website data in different fields, so in marketing and some other fields, they quite often would mention this Wayback Machine Internet Archive as like a potential way to get around this, because it's a big database that's been scraping the web since I think 1996. But there was not really any systematic effort to see what's the quality of that database. Is it usable for management work? Those kinds of questions. So what we did in that paper is basically evaluate for a certain set of firms, in this case the large publicly traded US firms, if we use the Wayback Machine, what's the quality, what are the things you run into, what's the coverage, all those kinds of things. So for that project, we both describe the Wayback Machine as a data source. We also provide data and code for future work who wants to use it for their own, set of websites. And yeah, we found it's quite a good database in terms of coverage, also going back in time for the kinds of firms that it has. So it's not only the big firms. If you also check, for example, for like newly founded ventures, it quite often is already covering those quite soon after founding. So yeah, that's been a nice project to kind of help research tap into that kind of longitudinal website data and talk about how to do it practically as well. I'm not sure if it's fully like career development, but I do think it's very important to find your community, right? So trying to figure out, yeah, who do I want to fit with? For example, at conferences, what kind of divisions do you like? What kind of people do you like to work with? And then over time, also starting to work with co-authors that you, on a personal level, really like, even if there's maybe not a perfect topic fit. Because I mean, the PhD is it's a marathon, right? But also the academic career, I think, is really a marathon. I mean, I have some projects that have taken years, years and years, and are still not out. And I think that if you have co-authors that you really, on a personal level, can get along with well, you can help each other, get through the rejections and get through all the struggles of doing research. And I think that's sometimes a bit of an underappreciated part of the doing research, the grappling with rejection and long time horizons and all those things. Yeah, I think it's also important to really treat the PhD as a job. I mean, for many it's a passion, but at the same time, I think separating work from private life is really important. Like for me, I still do that. I try not to work evenings. I try not to work weekends. But then the hours that I do work from 9 to 5 or so, I try to really work well. I think both from a well-being point of view, it's important, but also just being able to separate the work from you as an individual, right? Because again, rejection is very common, and then if your work gets rejected and that's all you do and all you are, I think it can be quite unhealthy. Where if you separate it more and you have your hobbies, you have your family, your friends, I think but you're more able to make it over the years, I would say. Well, this was Richard Haans. It was a pleasure to be here in Lyon and for answering these questions. Thanks for having me.